Hello, I'm Robert, voluntary fact-checker for our Facebook group Doomsday Debunked, where we help people who are scared of many things. And this is to help people who are scared that our sun might explode. So the simple answer is no, it can't. And our Earth can't explode either, and the Earth can't crack open. So I'm just going to explain a bit more how we know about that. So first of all, this shows how our sun it's in billions of years ago. It was just a protostar, which was a collapsing cloud of dust and gas. And then it became a main sequence star which gradually brightened up. And that was because of the hydrogen in the gas fusing into helium as it got hot enough. And then now it's a main sequence star and it's slowly burning the hydrogen into helium. And it's got vast amounts of hydrogen left. So very, very slowly getting very, very slightly warmer as it goes on. Eventually it runs out of helium in hydrogen in the core and starts to get hotter still, and when it's hot enough it'll burn helium. And then it eventually fades away as a white dwarf. Well, there's a planetary nebula in between. So this is where we are there. And just gradually, very, very, very slightly getting warmer over billions of years. Then the red giant, then the planetary nebula, and then the white dwarf. So how do we know about that? We know about this because we can see the stars at many stages of their life. We can't see our sun back then when it's a protostar, because that was billions of years ago. But we can see stars right now that are in that stage. We can see red giants right now. Indeed, this is an example of a red giant, Betelgeuse, in the Orion Nebula. If you especially live in the northern hemisphere, this is one of the most easily recognizable constellations. Looks a little bit like looks like a sword, looks like a belt, and then there's some stars there that look a little bit like, out of the picture, that look a little bit like a bow. And so it's a warrior in the sky. Very ancient symbolism. And this is the top left star in his right hand shoulder. If you imagine he's facing towards us, then that star is very red in colour, and that is a red giant. And the sun will become a star like that in the far future. And then this at the bottom left is Rigel, which is very blue in colour, and that's a blue giant. So the sun never becomes a blue giant. And the colour actually tells us their temperature. It's very much like if you heat up a bar of metal, eventually it turns red, and then it'll turn white, and it'll even turn yellow, and eventually it'll turn blue in colour if you heat it very, very hot. And this is just very much the same. And so this is quite a cool star, and this is a very hot star. And so there are two very obvious, easy properties of a star. One is whether it's red or blue, which tells us its temperature. The other is how faint or bright it is. Now, to know how intrinsically faint it is, we need to know how far away it is. But we know how far away, because obviously if it's very close it looks brighter, even if it's a faint star. If it's very far away it looks faint, even if it's a bright star. But we know the distance to all the nearby stars. We can measure that very accurately nowadays. And so we know how far away they are, so we know how bright or faint they are. And we actually have ways of working out distance even for very distant stars. So that leads to this diagram, and for some reason this is not letting me show you the whole picture at once, but this shows the colour, and so the redder ones, which are the cooler ones at the right, and the whiter ones, or the bluer ones, which are the brighter ones at the left, are the hotter ones at the left, and then the brighter ones are up, and the cooler ones are down. So this is a very cool red star. This is a very hot, bright, blue star. And we are in the middle. We are in the yellow or yellowish branch of it. Our sun is actually more white than yellow, but it counts as the yellow giant. And so we were born on the main sequence, which is where we are. Well, at the T2I stage, first of all we started up there, and then we gradually, over about 10 million years, we came down to the main branch. We've been there and we'll be there for billions of years. and eventually we head up. So this is these are a little bit redder and rather brighter, cool down as the star condenses. It gets a little bit less bright, and then it gets a bit gets hotter, and it becomes a main sequence star. And then, as it gets towards the end of its life, when it gets to its old age, then not its old age, its maturity, and then eventually it turns into this red giant where it cools down. Remember, going to the right is cooling down, but it gets brighter, going up, it goes brighter, and it does very complicated things. And eventually, it ejects lots of the gases in a planetary nebula, and then it does this rather big turnaround where it very quickly cools, gets brighter, not get brighter, gets hotter without getting any brighter, and then it gradually cools down, and you end up with a white dwarf. And that happens at the very end when the core shrinks, it ejects the gases and the core shrinks. Anyway, that's all very complicated, but this is basically a short summary. Start as the protostar, turn into the normal star, turn into the red giant, then you've got the planetary nebula when it throws off its gases, and then what's left cools down and becomes that white dwarf. And so that we know what's going to happen to our sun, and we can see all these stars that are in different stages of that process, as well as other ones in other branches. And this is some of the other things that can happen to a star. This one, let me maximize it, good. So we are in this branch. So become a sun-like star, a red giant, a planetary nebula, which is a very beautiful thing, and then a white dwarf. A slightly smaller star, and this is just according to the weight of the star. So a lighter star, then it never becomes a red giant. It just continues the red dwarf, and then eventually it ends up in a white dwarf far in the future. And then if it's very, very small, it just becomes a brown dwarf, which just fizzles away, and there's a little bit of fusion, and that's it. And then you get these various other possibilities. So the supernova happens with with a bigger star, which turns into a blue supergiant, which then turns into a red giant, which then turns into a blue giant, which then explodes as a supernova. So that's that's one path. It can turn into a blue giant after red giant, or just go straight into a supernova. And then here's another one where it turns into blue supergiant, then a hypernova, and then that turns into a black hole. There's some rather extraordinary stars that they're so big they turn into a blue supergiant, and that just collapses into a black hole without producing any kind of a supernova. So just a little bit bigger than the hypernova, it just collapses straight into a black hole without producing anything. And then a very, very heavy star produces a very, very big kind of supernova. So those are the different things that can happen, broadly speaking. And that's another way of looking at it. So anyway, we know all that very well. So some people also worry about the superflare, and our sun can't produce a superflare. It's the wrong kind of star to do that. And it's the same thing for all of these. You have the observation of stars at many different stages. You also have the modelling. We can model how they work. We work out how the process of the fusion of the different elements that are produced in the process of fusion. And so now, I will talk about separately at some point. If you want, if you want a video for any of my past articles, please just say in a comment that you want a video for this article, then I can do you a video for it. So this is one of these past articles, and it's about how when the sun dies and the solar system goes dark, what would happen? Well, the various places in the solar system where human beings can survive at different stages of the growth. So as it goes up, as the sun eventually heats up, we can protect Earth, we can protect it with shields, we can move it further away from the sun, but I think most likely we could, for a while Mars becomes habitable, for a while Europa becomes habitable, and the Callisto would be perhaps more likely one for humans, and the other moons of Jupiter. And so there are various places which will become habitable in the future, and then we can also go into space and have space habitats in space, where using materials from the asteroid belt, You can build these big rotating spinning habitats. Spinning habitats that spin like that. Let's go around. How can I do it like that? Spin like that. Big circular habitats that spin around very, very slowly for gravity. So slowly that you're not going to get dizzy or anything with it. You're not going to get nauseous. And just very slow spin, enough for gravity. And then, and so we may well be living in habitats like that, or our descendants, a few centuries from now. And it turns out that there's enough material in just the asteroid belt alone for 1,000 times the land area of Earth. So there's potential, vast amounts of space that we can create with these artificial habitats. And they'd have seas and oceans, and we could even, they could have mountains if we wanted, if we make a very big habitat. And so that's a possible future for us. And there are many other ways that one way or another, I'm sure that humans, or whatever we evolve into, we are very successful. I don't expect humans to go extinct. Humans are extremely successful, and in the future, whatever we evolve into, then that will be able to survive in almost anywhere in the solar system, probably, just like we can survive almost anywhere on Earth right now. So just like we can live anywhere from the Arctic to the Kalahari Desert right now, then in the future I think we're going to be able to live anywhere from Mercury all the way out to Pluto and beyond. And there are going to be habitats with human beings in all these places. And I don't see a future where I don't see humans going extinct, actually, ever, at least for billions and billions. I'm sure there will be humans still, or not humans, whatever species we evolve into, because we are evolving and our technology doesn't stop us evolving, and even with technology we evolve along with that. So whatever species there are, and probably other species as well, like the whales, the parrots, the crows, the elephants, the dogs, the cats, the cows, the camels, eventually all of them will have descendants, probably way in the future, that are intelligent like us, and as well as non-intelligent descendants too, probably. And so who knows, I think it's probably quite unusual to have only one species of intelligent creatures in a civilization. Indeed, even just a few centuries ago, a few thousand years ago, there were different species of hominids on Earth. So I expect a multi-species future with all these, like for instance, intelligent parrots. There'll probably be things like the grey parrots, but they're fully civilized. They can speak just as eloquently as we can. Grey parrots are very, very, their brains are very, very tiny neurons, and so they could be as intelligent as us with a much smaller brain. And so there's no reason why we can't have grey parrots with the same level of intelligence as a human being, and they may be part of our future civilization way, way in the future, when it's a white dwarf of our sun, and on and on and on into the future, on and on and on and on. For inconceivably, very hard to conceive how much time there is in the future of our star, when it will still be habitable to human beings in one way or another, or whatever we evolve into. So anyway, I hope that helps some of you who are scared of us becoming a supernova. And it can't happen. We know our star very well. It also can't become a super flare. Ours is the wrong kind of star for that. And that's basically it. And I don't know what else I want to talk about. I've talked about those before. So I'll upload this. If you want me to go into any depth of any of this, or talk about any of these other things separately, then please request in a comment, and I will do that.